So this tutorial is all about using your aqua pens, but essentially using them as though they were a water-based ink to do some blending techniques with. So a little bit like our Harmony inks or like a distress ink, but you can get that effect using your pens. So this is what we're doing here. So where we've blended a blue into the pink colour beautifully, you get that seamless result. Now what we're going to use to do that is we're going to use the pens that are in the kit. We're going to use the blue and the pink. Now bear in mind you could also create a beautiful purple shade from this if you wanted to blend the two together. And I'm going to use one of our blending tools. Now you can use any sort of blending tool or a makeup sponge. I find these ones a lot easier because I like to hold the handle and be able to really work this in with the handle. Now what I'm going to do is use a product called glycerin. And this is just regular glycerin. I don't want you to think it's a specialist craft product in any way. You can buy it in all sorts of different forms. This is a vegetable glycerin that I got from the store that does the foodstuffs. You can get it from the chemist, the pharmacy where you would buy glycerin for a sore throat. It is literally regular glycerin, and you can pick it up for like less than $1 or £1 or €1 wherever you're watching this from. For a jar this sort of size. It's really inexpensive. And what it does is you add glycerin to a water-based product and it increases the open time on a product. So the open time is the time it takes for that product, for the water-based ink to dry into the paper. Now we're going to use a regular watercolor card, the cardstock that comes inside your subscription box. And what you'll find is it'll take the ink a lot better. I'm going to show you the best technique for applying this. So with the glycerin, less is more. What you'll find is the first time you use it, you'll put far too much on. You want the tiniest little amount. Can you see I've just got a tiny little dribble there? And then what we're going to do is work that into our sponge. So when we say work it in, you're going to dab it in to start with. And then I want you to really work this round. So if you notice, I'm not just going in circular motions, I'm really capturing it all in now. I'm overdoing it there a little bit to show you. But what I'm doing is I'm pushing the glycerin into the centre of the sponge. This is the sponge I've already used for the blue one. But you can see I've loaded that up with glycerin. If you ever find that you've got too much in, and you'll know there's too much because if your colours are very pale and washed out and you can't really see them, you've got too much glycerin in. All you're going to do is you're going to bring in a piece of kitchen towel and you're just going to take off the excess. But we'll see whether I've got too much in when we get started, right? So I'm going to scribble a little bit of colour down onto my glass mat. Now whether it's a glass mat or whether it's one of them brown non-stick mats, they all work in exactly the same way. And I'm going to load up my applicator with plenty of the blue ink. You see this, I mean I've got it really loaded up there and it's not really taking any more. You see it's quite wet. That suggests to me I've got a lot of glycerin. But let's give it a go. So I'm going to try just circular motions, right? And circular motions coming all the way down, and I'm going to blend that right out. Now I'm really loving the effect that I'm getting there, all right? And you can always build up multiple layers. Notice I'm always going in circular motions and at all times I'm coming off the paper. That's the trick with it. You're always coming off the paper. Now as I'm starting to run out, pick up a little bit more. Again, off the paper, we're building up another layer. So I'm just, if I want it lighter, I'm just doing lighter circles into the centre so that you get that kind of diffused look a little bit, right? So I've got that lovely diffused look, and then if I want to go dark around the outside, pick up more, and you're just going to load even more up. And remember, if I feel like I've got too much glycerin on, I'm just going to take it off the sponge, take it off the mat. I've already got some glycerin built in on here, so I'm going to pop a bit more down. So there's some in the sponge already, and then I'm just going to load that up. And you can see it just darkens it a little bit further, okay? So there is my blue. Yep. Then I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to clean this up. Now I like to keep one of these little applicators per colour. So this one I'm going to keep for the blue. I'm going to put a new one on now to do the pink. So new applicator, new bit of glycerin. So watch again, we're going to do the tiniest of tiny little drops. Oh, I'll put a spare one over there just in case I need some extra. We're going to dip it in and we're going to work it into the tool. And I can already feel like this doesn't have as much on as my last one did. You'll know it when you start working with it. So I don't quite know yet if it's going to be enough, but we'll try. We can always add more. It's harder taking it off. It does come off, but it's just a little bit harder. So now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to pop a little bit of my pink down. And I'm going to load that pink again, circular motions, pushing it into the centre. Not just round and round, but circular to draw it into the centre. Once I'm happy that I've got it all over the surface, we'll start in the bottom again, circular motions, and then where we meet the blue, we're going to blend the two together. There we go. Now it's taking a little bit longer to blend now because I don't have as much glycerin on. Try not to get it on your fingers either, because you don't want it, I'll touch it like this, you don't want it to come off. So, and then where the blue meets the pink, if we just go over together, it creates that new shade. So in this case, the purple. So it's just going to get us that lovely ombre purple effect. And then we're just going to drag it across the centre. And that's how you get that lovely transition from one shade to the next. Remember, you can always build up more colour. It's very difficult to take it away. So there's that lovely shading. Okay. Now you do want to make sure that's nice and dry. So if in doubt, you can just take your heat tool and give it a bit of a blast, just to make sure it is nice and dry before we go on to the stamping. Now again with the stamping, because we're using water-based products, you want a waterproof dye-based ink. Now we do the Spectrum Noir, the Finesse ink pads. The reason I would recommend this one is because it's a really detailed ink pad. So you want something that's, because it's waterproof, it's not going to move with water. So if we were to stamp something on here and then we later want to come back and apply more colour, because a water-based product, the inks that we're using, you don't want the stamped pieces to move with that. So other ink pads you could use something like a StazOn, would work really, really well. What I wouldn't use is something like a Memento, because that is it's water-based, it's not waterproof, so you need a waterproof one. And the reason I like the Finesse ones is because, as the name suggests, finesse, they're for really detailed stamping. And a lot of the stamps that you have in this set are beautifully detailed stamps, so you don't want to lose that detail by not stamping with a great ink pad. So if I'm just going to start here. Remember, you've got a whole selection of beautiful stamps in your box, 4 collections actually to work from. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line it up. Because I'm working on the rocker blocks, and I'm always lining it, if you notice, in the centre. So you want it over that centre cross, and the best thing to do is always to take the ink to the stamp. Never the other way around, because you want to make sure you don't miss any. And with the rocker blocks, you can in theory get ink anywhere on the surface, just not on the raised part, and it won't transfer to your paper. So I'm going to stamp this, so we're going to just do one down the side, and because the rocker blocks are clear, you can see through them. So one down one side, a little bit more ink. I'm going to take one up from the bottom here, just slightly twisting so that we get a little bit of a different feel every time. And then I'm going to go with another one in the centre. And because my cardstock was still a tiny bit wet, it doesn't matter because it hasn't bled, which is the benefit of working with a waterproof dye. You want something which isn't going to bleed. I'll just clean up the excess there. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to take this stamp off. And I've got, if you notice on one of the sets, it's got these silhouette butterflies, which are fabulous to stamp with. So again, if we just lift the backing off our stamp, first of all, I'm going to take a couple of the different sizes, the large one and one of the smaller ones. Okay. And I'm just going to, again, now they will go on the smaller rocker blocks if you have them, but if you are using a small stamp on a larger block, make sure you always put it in the centre. So plenty of ink on there, and these will take the ink really, really well. And I'm just going to stamp through, and then I'm going to change each time. So I'm going to change and put the lighter one on. So again, just cleaning up the excess ink off my stamp. It's just a great way to get into the habit of keeping those stamps nice. And that little bit of excess bleeding that I'm getting, that is just because my base isn't quite dry with glycerin. But it's still giving a lovely kind of very ethereal feel to it. So get them nice and clean. And then that is ready just to mat and layer. So when it comes to the matting and layering, I've just used, what you'll find is the cardstock in the kit, they are the nice perfect colours to match in beautifully with the colours that you've got. So obviously we've tried to create a range of colours, but it's the little things like this that I know that the purple in the background colour will perfectly coordinate with the pink that you've got in the set and the purple that it creates. And I'm going to mat and layer this onto a little bit of the watercolor cardstock. Now you can obviously gut the cardstock as I've shown you in previous videos, but it just gives you a nice idea of how this is going to look when it's finished. Then just to finish the card off, you'll see I've got the I've stamped out beautiful again in that same water-based ink, so that if you watch, when I apply a little bit of colour over top of it, that's not moving. See the same if I get my blue in and apply a little bit of the blue and blend the blue perfectly into the pink. Can you see how the background stamped piece isn't moving? That's because it was stamped in this same ink. Okay, so if I just shape this a little bit now, and I'm just going to add this onto the base of my card, and that's how I designed this box to come together, just so that you would have all of the little finishing touches. And I think that card, nice and simple, and just beautiful.